I've rarely sat down across from somebody and had them be able to articulate, what do you actually want? Well, they cannot answer that question, and they fill it with addictions, they fill it with hobbies, they fill it with dopamine chase, they fill it with so much stuff, and nobody can answer that question, what do you want?
Yeah, well, that's a complicated question, you know. I mean, I would say that's the consequence in the most fundamental sense of the death of God in the most fundamental way. It's the death of a sense of higher order unity, eh? Now, it's also a very complicated question. If you ask someone, what do you want? If you could ask your wife that, what do you want? You'll probably freeze her into immobility, because it's really like asking, how do you want all of your life to go? Please summarize. And one of the ways that you can deal with that, you can ask people more micro questions too about what they want. So you might say, well, if you could have the education you wanted, what would that look like? If you had the job or career track that would motivate you, just hypothetically, what might that look like? Sketch out a bad plan. If you had some friends, do you want some friends? And if so, how many? And if you had friends and the right number, how much time per week would you like to spend with them? And if you had some time outside of work and familial responsibilities, what might you like to do with your time that you would really like to do? And the thing about these questions is that they're real questions. You know, there's this gospel statement that if you knock, the door will open, and that if you ask, you will receive, and if you search, you'll find. If you seek, you'll find. And people who are faithless in some sense think about it as kind of a Hallmark greeting card approach to the world. It's just, well, you just ask for things and they appear. It's like, no, that isn't what any of that means. It means nothing that you want will manifest itself unless you aim for it. And you won't aim for it unless you know what it is, and you won't know what it is unless you ask yourself. And then you might say, well, why don't you ask yourself? And the answer is, well, maybe no one ever explained to you that you needed to, which is a crucial issue. And then maybe you don't also trust yourself. You know, because you might think, well, if I let myself know what I wanted, given my bloody track record, I would do everything I could to screw it up. So I'll just keep myself opaque to myself so that I don't fail at something that's truly important. And then I can always regale with myself with the idea that, well, I didn't succeed, but I didn't really try. Had I really tried, I might have succeeded. Whereas if you let yourself know what you want and then you try, you also set the preconditions for failure. So it's risky.
That's right.
But the alternative is, well, you don't know what you want. So it is a meditative practice. Like, okay, if I could have what I wanted, imagine the world was constituted so that the entire planet wouldn't explode in an apocalypse if I got what I needed and wanted. Yeah, right. The probability that you'll be happy because you've accomplished something in any permanent sense is virtually zero. Well, the reason for that isn't what positive emotion is for. Positive emotion is to indicate that you're making progress towards a valued goal.
Yes.
Now that's
it's the driver, right? Not the finish line.
Exactly. Well, and that's actually pharmacologically separate, right? Because a satiation reward, which would be the accomplishment of something, calms you and stops that program from running. So, for example, once you've become vice president, if that was your goal, then the whole pursuing vice president program comes to a halt. Now, the problem with that is it leaves you without a goal, and it also leaves empty space, which you immediately have to fill. And so often people feel disquiet because now they don't know what to do, and they miss that rush because they're no longer pursuing something. And so it's very important to know that positive emotion is experienced in relationship to a valued goal. And then the question becomes, well, what's the most valuable goal to pursue? And that's really a metaphysical and a theological question. There's higher order goals, and you need the higher order goals because they integrate you. And a goal of becoming a college president is a higher order goal than no goal at all and just sitting in your bed and eating Cheetos. And this is where things become profound and serious, and I would say even in a religious sense, because what's religious is about what's profound and serious in some sense by definition. So you might say, well, who should I be? And you might think, well, I should be the college president, I should have this car, I should have this house. Those are all very particularized versions of yourself. And the problem with them is that they're concrete and final actualities and not processes. And so here's a good vision that's a high order vision. And I think it's the vision that our whole culture is founded on. I should be the person who genuinely confronts the problems and challenges that confront me in my life. So that's an attitude of active and voluntary engagement. It's an identity of process as well. It's like I'm going to be someone who doesn't shy away from the challenges of life. That's a precondition for therapeutic transformation, because in order for you to improve, you have to identify the problem, the dragon, and you have to be willing to face it voluntarily. And so you say to yourself, I'm going to do what I can to develop the courage to confront the problems in my life voluntarily. That's who I want to be. And then maybe underneath that, it's like, well, could I become college president? Could I be successful in my business? Could I be successful in my marriage? It's like, that's all well and good. And those are more concretized goals. But the highest order goal has to be something like an approach rather than a final state.